good evening. Myself, Sandeep. I'm an SC with Checkpoint. So basically, I've been with Checkpoint for more than 1.5 years. So the basic agenda for today is we'll discuss something about 3D security analysis. Now, going forward, we'll get to know more about what is that concept, what we are talking about, and what is the value proposition which we are giving for customers. Okay. So basically, a quick snapshot of the company as such. Now, Checkpoint as an organization is based out of Israel. So our headquarters is based out of Israel, and our sales headquarters is based out in US. Right. So this basically gives a snapshot of the company. So we have been in the industry for more than 20 plus years. So initially, we started off in the year 1993. So I mean, that's a time, incidentally or coincidentally, that's the time in which the internet was born. So there has been a lot of coincidence there. So we started off in 1993. We got registered in 1994. Right. So this basically talks about the revenue as such of the company. And it's been a pure play security player since its inception, which means basically when we start off the company, so still till date, so it's been a purely security focused company. There's not been any change in terms of a networking sector or a switching sector. So it's a completely security vision focus based company. Now, this basically talks about the different types of innovations which we had going forward, starting from 93 all the way to till date. So it's a little bit old slide. We have not covered the latest ones which has been covered. So there has been a lot of innovations which has happened from our perspective itself. The terminology, the firewall concept, what you see here, or basically the stateful packet inspection, the technology, or what you see in normal scenarios. So that's been introduced by Checkpoint in 1993, which has been used in almost all of the solutions as you see in date. Right. Now, going forward, very recently, we came up with something called as a software-blade architecture. So we'll not be touching about anything specifically technically here. Right. I'll try to focus towards the key focus point. Okay, so this is basically, again, going forward, starting from 93 on the way to 2010, 2011. So there's a lot of been changes. There's been a few acquisitions also which happened going forward. So it gives a complete snapshot as such. So what is it all about? Okay, this basically talks about the support, different types of support levels which we had. Now, our worldwide TAC center is based out of Israel, Tel Aviv, and we also have a local TAC which is based out of Bangalore. So most of our customers depends on the support level what they take. So they will be either connected to the local, which is the nearby TAC centers available for them. So here predominantly I would focus about something called as a 3D security. Now this is one of the terminology which we launched last year. Right now, from the naming convention itself, so 3D stands for basically 3 dimensions, right? So what are these? You can see that one is a policy, the another one is a people, and the third one is an enforcement. So what do you mean by that? And the first one, let's take an example of a policy. Now, you would have seen that I copied one PPT onto the laptop here, which was available here. But I mean, as a policy, we are not allowed to share any PPT assets. That's a security policy. Now, different organizations have different kind of security policies, right? So you may say some kind of confidential documents, you cannot send it out. So that might be a security policy, which as a user, I'm adhered to follow that particular security policy, which is, otherwise it will be like a violation of a compliance, right? Now, the option is nothing but how do we enforce a security policy onto a user in real time? Now, today, I have, let's say, 1, 2, 3 security policies in my company. And as an employee, yes, I know that, what I need to follow, or what I need to adhere. Now, tomorrow, let's say, I change the policy. Maybe a new CISO came in, or maybe a new CXO came in. He changed the security policy all across. Now, as a normal user or as an employee, how do I know that the policy has been changed, right? Who will let me know that there is a policy which has come up new? So how do you track that? So what we are trying to do here is nothing but we are trying to bring the security as well as the business together. There could be a change in policy which is happening starting from today. We need the users to follow that in a real-time scenario, right? So whatever changes is happening inside the organization, it has to be followed up then and then. So that's the idea of having a 3D security as a concept bringing in, right? Now, the idea here is nothing but how can we help customers to bring this 3D security approach? Now, there should be a baseline in which where do we start with. So that's the focus point for the next slides. So this basically talks about something called as a 3D security assessment. So this is basically a free assessment which we do for our customers, right? So what does it mean is nothing but most of the customers, if you see, most of the customers, what do we use here? They use some kind of a security solutions in place, right? The solutions are highly sophisticated nowadays. I mean, you might be using some kind of an IPS technologies, could be various firewall technologies, or could be different web security technologies. The technologies may differ. Now, idea is nothing but we need to make sure that the technology is what is being used is up to the mark. Whether there is any loopholes inside the organization. How do we know that the security posture is up to the mark? Now, we do a health checkup for ourselves. Let's say in 1 year, I do a health checkup of mine, or let's say in 6 months, I do a health checkup, right? So what do we get in that is nothing but we'll get a report saying that where do you stand currently, right? What is your different levels? I mean, maybe sugar levels, cholesterol levels. That's a health checkup which a normal human being goes through. It's the same thing, we need to have some kind of health checkup for our infrastructure as such, right? We need to see whether I have the solutions in place, but the security is still up to the mark. There should be a baseline for that. Now, the same thing which we discussed now, so this basically talks about the solutions which we are using. So I'll not highlight any solution as such. Could be any number of solutions which we are using, but the question basically arises nothing but are we really secure, right? How do we know that, yes, my solution which I've implemented, maybe spending X dollars, whether it's up to the mark or not? How do I know that, let's say a new user comes in, he brings in some kind of his own device, or could be a corporate laptop, or could be a personal laptop inside the organization, whether it's affecting the security as such? How do I get to know that? My users are roaming users. Let's say today I'm working in office today. Right now I'm in an event. I will go back to office connected onto my network. What is the guarantee that my machine is not being infected? So there are different case scenarios which we need to address. So we need to have some kind of a baseline, or we need to have some kind of a visibility, like what is happening inside the network, what is happening inside the organization. So this basically talks about the web usage as a control. Now, if you see majority of the applications or the web-based applications, what you see here is all based on something called as a Web 2.0 application. Now, what is the difference here? Let's say you would have seen a Yahoo page or a Google page before, right? So let's say if you take an example of a Yahoo page. Now, you would have opened that page, let's say, take an example of, let's say, 5 years back or 10 years back. Now, once you open a page, whatever contents you see inside a Yahoo website, everything remains static, right? There's no changes in that website. If you see back, like say 10 years back. Now recently what you see, if you open a Yahoo site, you can see a video is running here, maybe on the one side of the page, you can see a video which is running. There's an ad which is running in. There's a news which is changing every 2 seconds, 5 seconds as such. Now this is basically kinds of a widget which runs inside a web page, right? This keeps on changing it dynamically. Now there's no way to control this as such, right? So that's predominantly focusing towards a Web 2.0 applications. There are a lot of applications which we run internally on the client machines. Let's say take an example of a torrent, right? Or could be a Skype or XYZ applications. There are a lot of client server applications, right? Or could be a normal Facebook or LinkedIn or any other particular websites what we use. But how do we track it? How do we know that what are the different types of applications which are running inside the organization? How do we track that? So this basically talks about how can we control that. This again basically talks about the compliance perspective. From when I say compliance part, take an example of a, let's say, healthcare industry. Now, if you go for a healthcare industry, they follow something called as a HIPAA-based compliance. Now, what does that mean? It's nothing but, let's say, I'm a patient which is diagnosed with XYZ disease, right? So obviously, this information cannot be shared with an external third party, and I mean without me knowing it, right? Or take an example of a banking segment. So they follow something called as a PCI-based compliance there. Now, I have an account in one of the banks, and my account information or my credit card number or my PIN code number cannot be shared with the third-party person. It's again a compliance, right? It's against a compliance. So how do we know that there is a compliance violation which is happening? How do we know that any of the user inside the organization is making that compliance violation? So this basically gives an example of a user. Let's say if Saturday, Sunday, I want to work from home. I can send any of the sensitive data inside my organization to my personal ID. Now, how do we track that, right? Could be sensitive for you. Could be, let's say, if it's a software-based industry, it could be a source code, which say, let's say, I cannot take my corporate laptop to my home. Let me work on my personal laptop. So how do we track those users? This basically talks about something called as a bot. Now, there is a difference between a virus and a bot here, right? Now, let's say the main difference is nothing but, let's say, if you do a normal scan on your endpoint machines, if you take any of the known leading antivirus vendors in the industry, if you do a normal scan on your endpoints, the reason is nothing but virus, yes, they'll be able to catch it now and then. So let's say if I do a scan now, it just takes seconds to catch it. Now, the difference between a bot is nothing but, so bot is something like a piece of software which gets embedded onto a system, Could be, it can enter through a USB drive, or could be a link, which, let's say you got a mail today, you clicked on that link, you are redirected to one of the website, which downloaded the content onto your laptop, which we will not know, right? The difference between a bot here is nothing but it's polymorphic in nature, which means once I run a scan, let's say today it's looking at a PDF file. Now, if I run a scan on that PDF file, immediately the file format changes to an XYZ format. Could be a text format, could be an Excel format. So how do we catch that particular file, or how do we catch that particular bot? It's tough to catch it. So there should be some kind of a mechanism in which I need to know that your machine is infected inside the organization with a bot which can communicate externally without a person knowing it, or without the administrator knowing it, or without the user itself knowing it. Now, any of the security solution in place cannot be able to catch it because it works in normal format. You cannot see any kind of a behavioral difference here, right? So you need some kind of a sophisticated intelligence to identify these kind of traffics, right? So we have a technology specifically for that. So we talked about all the 4 main challenges here. One which I said, the threats and intrusions parts. For that, we have something called as an IPS engine which we runs inside our solutions. That basically covers about any kinds of threats and attacks which is coming inside. On the applications front, we have something called as an application control, right? So we can control any known applications inside the industry. So we have the highest database in the industry, more than around 4,600 plus applications, and on top of it, around 270,000 widgets. So widget example could be Facebook. I'll consider it as an application inside Facebook, let's say chat, or let's say a posting or a game. That's a widget for me, right? So that basically is controlled using our application control solution. Sensitive information loss, we have a data loss prevention solution which runs on the perimeter level, so we can catch any kind of a known traffic, network traffic, which is, or any kind of a sensitive data which is going across your network. On the bots and viruses, the same thing which I discussed, we have a unique anti-bot technology which predominantly blocks any kind of a bot-infected networks, bot-infected machines in the organization. Okay, so this basically gives a snapshot about how do we generate a report assess. So basically, idea is nothing but to do this assessment for you and give a report. So the report would look like this. So this is how a sample report would look like. So there are multiple factors to that particular report. Now, what is it? Nothing but if you see the first page, this basically talks about the brief of what is the key findings which we found out. Now, as you see here, you can see what are the key risk applications which has been found, what are the key intrusions which has been found, the data loss events, and the bots, right? So this gives a high-level summary. Now, the difference here is nothing but even though you are using multiple solutions, you will not be able to get, what should I say? It's like a consolidated report what you get, sorry. So it's like a consolidated report what you get in terms of different mechanisms. Let's say it could be an endpoint, could be a perimeter, could be a network. So different kinds of things have been consolidated into one, right? So this gives a high-level description about what are the key findings. As I said, could be an application or could be a bot. This basically talks about the, in detail, like what are the things which we found out as such. So this is a snapshot of the different kinds of reports what you get inside the, different kinds of snapshots what you get inside the report as such. It basically covers your data loss, your intrusions, how many machines were infected, what are those machines, which is the user which is got infected, which is the user machine which is got infected. It gives you much detailed information on that. So this basically talks about from a remediation perspective, as I said, on the anti-bot engine, your application control engine, your DLP engine. This basically talks about the remediation. Now, I have found out something. Now, how do we remediate that? So this is where we can help you, right? So the assessment part is done free of cost for you. So once you identify the report, now how do we remediate that? That's where the solutions will help you, right? So the customers can take a call whether, I need to implement a point solution here, or, I can take an integrated solution which can get all these functionalities at one shot. Now, how does this work? It's very easy. Now, we do not touch your existing network to run this particular analysis. What do is nothing but we install our own solution on a VMware. It could be a workstation or a VMware player. So it's just a software which runs on that VMware solution. We'll take a dedicated laptop. We have a specific hardware requirements to be met there. We take a dedicated laptop and connect it onto a network, which is nothing but a mirror port. I'm sure that most of you understand a mirror port. It's nothing but it's a copy of the traffic which goes in and out of your network. So whatever you access from a user perspective, let's say I'm a user sitting internally accessing some of the websites, me or my machine which is sitting on the network will get a copy of that. So I'll analyze those particular traffic and give you a consolidated report. Now, normally, we run this tool for a period of like around 24 to 48 hours. That is more than enough. Now, the more you run, the better the report. So it's like that. So let's say if I run it for a period of 24 to 48 hours, the information or the reports what you get is much, much granular in nature. So once I have the data, so let's say, as I said, depend on the time frame which I run it across. Now, you have an option in which you can drill down to multiple factors. Let's say I want to get information about one particular user assets. Normally, we do not touch the production network. The reason being, normally we do not integrate with any domain system, so that you may not get a specific user assets, but obviously we'll be able to track based on IP. Now, if I take a report today and you want to see that, okay, for this particular user, what is the bandwidth consumed? Right? So for this particular machine, what is the bandwidth consumed? What are the things which this particular machine has been accessed? So if you want if you want to drill down more into that, the solution has the capability to do that. Okay, so coming back, to emphasize on the terminology which I discussed about is on the 3D. So 3D basically, as I said, it's on the policy, right? Say that as a normal employee, it's my duty to follow the security policy as such. Now, there should be a mechanism in which whenever I change the policy, I should be aware, or the user should be aware in a real-time scenario. Now, 3D specifically talks about that, and this is just a starting in which we do an assessment for our customers. Going forward, once the customers has a solution in place, it will be easy for them to bring this security as well as business together in one shot. Thank you. Any questions?